Hello everybody, my name is Jeremy Little. I'm your host for this Telstra Live event today. Thank you for joining us. We're going to be talking about social selling, making connections to make sales. And for those of you that are watching / listening, it's an audio one, but you've still got the live platform. So get in there and get interactive with it. We want to hear from you today. We want you to send us questions. Got two really interesting and dynamic guests here, so I know that they want to hear the tough questions, so don't be afraid to ask them. Now, whether you're on a Mac or a tablet, it's an interactive platform. You've got speaker bios, there's going to be a slide pack there you can follow along with, so get in and use the platform. So here is the topic, social selling, and here are our guests, Jill Rowley and Paul Gustafson. Guys, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
Of course. Great to have very experienced experts on the call today on this topic, and I'll get you guys to introduce yourselves in just a second. So to start with, for everybody that is on the line, we've got a question for you. Have you made a purchase from a vendor after they initially reached out to you via social channels? Whilst everyone answers that question, I'm going to ask our guests to introduce themselves. So, Jill, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I am a sales professional. I spent 13 years selling software at Salesforce.com and Eloqua, and was an early adopter of LinkedIn and other social channels, social networks. Oracle acquired Eloqua, and I spent about a year designing a global training program to teach the Oracle sales organization how to leverage social networks. And now I'm a professional speaker. I do keynotes and speak at conferences and do virtual events, and I love to share my passion for social selling with sales professionals and marketers alike. So first and foremost, I'm a sales rep, a sales professional who's carried a bag and 52 quarters on quota, so I know a lot about sales, but my buyer was marketing for over a decade, so I know a lot about modern marketing as well. But what I'm most passionate about is the customer and really understanding my customers and what they need and the help that I can deliver to them to make their world easier and better. So thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jill. And I was told on the quiet that you've presented to about 5,000 people on topics like this. So you've clearly got some deep knowledge on the topic. Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, yeah, thanks. My name is Paul Gustafson, and I am president of a marketing communications agency called TDA Group. We're based in Silicon Valley. We are the Valley's leading B2B content marketing firm. We run programs for tech leaders like IBM and Intel and Dell and SAP and VMware and others. And we're increasingly being drawn into creating content, streams of content, lots of different flavors of it that are designed to flow through social channels, through salespeople, through partners, to participate in that social conversation that's happening with prospective buyers. So this is a field where we're pioneering some best practices and something that's probably the fastest growing. You know, TDA has been around since the 80s, but recently this is probably the fastest growing part of our business. Is today's topic.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Paul. I'm sure everyone's very much looking forward to hearing from both of you. So, interesting polling results. 36% have said yes, they've made a purchase after being reached out to. 51% no. So, guys, what do you think about that? Jill, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think that clearly buying behavior is influenced by social channels. And more broadly, just the data that I've seen, I study this topic of the adoption of digital, the adoption of social, the adoption of mobile, and I look at it globally, and every data point is going up and to the right. Not only are more people using digital, more people using social and mobile, but they're spending more time in digital, in social, on mobile devices. So this data, in terms of making a purchase after initially reached out via social channels, 36%. What this doesn't actually look at is how many people went to social or to the web to start their purchase process. I think if you asked that question, we would see a much higher response, probably really close to 90%, where people are going to social or digital to start their purchase process. But every data point, everywhere in the world, up and to the right. More digital, more time in digital, more social, more time in social, more time on mobile devices.
Look, I think I know we're going to talk about this, but the interesting thing about this is that they may not even realize that they were being sold to, because it's about building human connections. Paul, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking. It's like the people that are saying no, I think are probably not really realizing how much they're influenced by the social streams that they participate in, or they're not participating in social venues at all. So we do see the numbers, they're striking, and it is, but even the 36% that said, that the way that question was phrased is, have you bought something when a vendor has reached out to you initially through a social network? That's a striking number. That's a big number for this audience, considering that, a decade or so ago, none of these venues were really existed in any kind of volume. So this next slide here about the natural cycle of B2B thought leadership it's a fun graphic that we put together that describes that this whole arena is a journey, right? And the philosophy that we espouse at TDA is around creating content that starts with thought leadership. The big ideas that the smart guys that are on top of the mountain in a particular subject matters, experts in a particular field, create these in very visionary and valuable thoughts. And when you share those in the social ocean, they interact with other ideas that are out there. They change, they evolve, they run into the sharks of reality, which are down there on the lower right. And that attention and feedback that you get from those social channels can spark new ideas and innovation, which then now leads to even more thought leadership. So it's a cycle. It's a journey that we're on, and this thought leadership is fuel for social interaction between salespeople and customers. Marketing really has one job, and that's to make sales easy. And by creating the right kinds of content that are interesting and engaging and helpful to buyers, these are great conversation starters or conversation facilitators between people who are helping people buy, right? Salespeople are typically looking for ways to have conversations about problems and new approaches to those problems that their offering is related to. And the idea of using thought leadership and expertise to help facilitate those conversations is an idea that we're seeing really begin to take off in the context of modern marketing.
So we've got two interesting questions. I want to get to them both. So Grant Atkins and Karen Smith, hello, thanks for joining in. Make sure you stick around. But so I want to get to Grant's question first. He said he started his own business 4 months ago, used LinkedIn solely to make targeted connections, and now he's so busy struggling to keep up with more social networking. So, what should he be doing now to keep up his social networking? Jill, you want to touch that one?
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I think to stay top of mind and to teach potential customers more about what he can do for them, how he can help them, sharing content, whether that be creating original content or sharing other people's content but giving those people, now that he's connected to on LinkedIn, a reason to think about him, to stay top of mind. Sharing content is a great way to passively stay top of mind with people in your LinkedIn network. So that would be one idea.
Well, what were you thinking?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking the same thing, and I think it doesn't have to be original. If you see something that's going to help the connections that you have on your LinkedIn network, share it. And it'll help them, and it'll help them find a piece of helpful content. And you're actually in an interesting spot because you have relationships with all of these connections. You're really busy. Your business is taking off. That means you're doing something right. And you yourself are building brand equity of being someone who knows how to succeed in whatever space you happen to be operating in. So if you have an idea or an observation or a tip that you can share with that network about how to work with you or things that you're seeing that can be helpful to your audience of prospective buyers, don't hesitate to post that on LinkedIn. Share it. And or if you see in the course of your day as you're reading the websites that are related to your business, or browsing the web at home as you're watching a sporting event in your recliner, and kind of flipping through your favorite news app on your tablet, you'll run across things that are relevant. And if you could just get in the habit of sharing that stuff, it can elevate both your credibility and your personal brand with that with your connections, right?
So I want to go to the next question by Karen Smith. It's a controversial one. We like tough questions. She brings up the topic of fraud, and she's saying that a lot of people don't buy online because they just don't trust that it's real. And in social, there's a lot of fraud. So how do you guys? What do you think about that? How do you tackle or cut through fraud, and how do you trust people?
I look at, and I use this example actually in an earlier conversation today, but I look at people's, I Google them, and then I look at their digital profiles. I'll look at their LinkedIn profile, and I'll see how many connections they have. Do we have any common connections? I'll see if people have endorsed them for certain skills, if they've recommended them. I am looking at people's online presence and determining whether this is someone who I want to get to know, whether I would like or trust. And in particular, in a B2B world where it's more of a relationship driven in a complex sale, I'm using these social networks to really determine if this is someone I want to buy from.
Yeah, and I think the backdoor references that you can get when someone has endorsed someone else on LinkedIn, you can find them on LinkedIn. They have a public profile. They have endorsements. You can reach out to those people and say, hey, look, I noticed that you've endorsed, Joe on his profile. Tell me more about that. Would you? I'm considering a relationship with this person on a particular front, and I'd be interested in your thoughts beyond that endorsement. If you go to a profile and they don't have any endorsements, and they don't really have their background is very sparse, and they're not really telling you what they did at certain places or what they've done in their past or what their skills are, then that does. I mean, I think that's a clear sign that you may be dealing with someone that is, trying to get you to send them some dollars so that they can make a deposit from some royal family that's had a death in the family from Nigeria or some other venue. We've all gotten that email where we just make a wire transfer of a few $100s and they'll send us tens of thousands. And the reason we get those emails is, unfortunately, for a certain part of our populations, they work, right? So I think the fraud question is one that these social networks can help. You can help vet the reputation, vet the credibility of someone that you're working with through these networks. And if they don't exist I think it is a red flag, and I think you can have real conversations with real people about other folks as you go to kind of vet that credibility, right?
So let's flip the perspective now. I'm someone that wants to sell to somebody, and I want them to trust me. What do I do with my social media profile in order to be seen as credible?
Yeah, I always talk about, in particular, certainly LinkedIn and even Twitter, Facebook as well. I'm not sure what social networks everyone on the call uses. It varies. But optimize those profiles for your customer, for the person you want to do business with, for the person that you have a product or service that can help them solve their business problems, achieve their goals, their personal goals, depending on what you're selling. So really look at your digital profiles, your social network profiles through the eyes of the customer that you're trying to build a relationship with, and ask yourself, does this look like someone would want to get to know me? Do I look credible? Do I look like I know the world in which my customer lives? So really look at it through the eyes of your customer and write it for your customer.
Anything to add to that, Paul? Well, yeah, I think it's easier said than done, right? I mean, I think if you are creating your LinkedIn profile and you are looking for a job when you create it, then you're going to kind of tune that for a recruiter, right, or for an HR department somewhere. If you are a sales professional and you're looking to kind of hit your number, now you do exactly what you want to do in terms of promoting that kind of spinning your profile in a way that positions you as an expert with your target customer. But I also think that, and Joe, I'd be interested in your ideas about how do you manage the interest of your employer on your profile versus your own personal interest in terms of kind of promoting yourself as a sales professional that maybe you wouldn't like to get a call from some other recruiter. And so if you're aimed solely at customers, does that hurt your career chances if you really kind of spin your profile just for your customers? Does that make sense? And those are different audiences. You can kind of optimize for one, but how do you do both?
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. Well, in fact, the buyer has changed more in the past 10 years than in the past 100. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
And sales is undergoing transformation, not fast enough, in my opinion. I think a lot of what I'm seeing still is selling the old way. A lot of smile and dial, a lot of pounce and pitch, and not enough of really knowing thy customer. A lot of volume, but lacking in the quality of the interaction with the potential customer. What we're seeing in the hiring profile of new salespeople is the characteristics and the competencies are changing. And recruiters aren't looking for the aggressive, hard-charging, strong negotiating sales rep who, gets the deal done at all costs. Screw the customer, they get the deal done. No, the competencies and capabilities of the modern sales professional, they're more collaborative, they're more curious, they're customer-centered and centric. They focus on solving business problems. They focus on educating their buyers, building deep, authentic relationships with them. So, in fact, the old school LinkedIn profile doesn't actually even resonate with the recruiter who's looking for a different breed of sales professional. That's how I answer it.
So the customer-driven, kind of more thoughtful profile is, in fact, more effective with recruiters too.
You bet. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good.
So the questions are coming in thick and fast. We're going to answer a couple of them on chat, and I'll get to one on the next polling question. But let's jump into the 5 pillars of social selling. Jill, do you want to kick us off on this?
Yeah, sure. So this is really looking at it through the eyes of a sales professional. There's a whole lot more work to be done at a corporate company level if you are going to implement social selling as a strategy within your organization. So this applies to anybody, actually any individual who wants to be more digitally and socially connected and active. So number one, I think we talked about this already, is looking at your LinkedIn profile and other social networks through the eyes of your customer, really painting a story about what you're passionate about, what motivates you, how you help other people be successful, using the tone of story and conversation, human speak, not Brian Smith spent 17 years designing da-da-da-da. No, this is like your personal presence. So own these networks and your summaries and your descriptions. Number two, this is for everybody. ABC, not always be closing. That's old school. New school, ABC, always be connecting. Your network is your net worth. And I think about going to physical events and getting business cards. Those are new people to connect with on LinkedIn. They're new people to follow on Twitter. Socially surround people. So connect with them on LinkedIn, follow them on Twitter, maybe retweet something that they've tweeted about that would be interesting and relevant to the people in your network. So this always be connecting, not just with potential customers, but your existing customers. How about being connected to your existing customers, to your partners, to your colleagues, to your peers, to your leadership team, but creating those social connections via the social networks. Three is really about content, and Paul can speak about content from the marketer's point of view, but I look at, as a sales professional, how I got the attention of so many of my buyers was by sharing content that was helpful and useful to them. So my buyers were marketing professionals thinking about becoming more data-driven, more revenue-oriented, leveraging new channels and tools. So I would share content that would be relevant and helpful to those marketing professionals. Paul, do you want to weigh in on the content piece? I know you know a lot about this.
Well, I mean, the content is key to it, because that's what flows through these social networks, are ideas, and they can be expressed in lots of different ways. The best ones are original and helpful. Mm-hmm. The very next, almost as good though, is something that you found that's also helpful. Doesn't have to be something that you come up with yourself. We do see clients that are thinking that they have to produce all of the content themselves, but they can look to and they should, and we certainly have a very nice practice, creating pieces of content for our clients, based on their thought leadership. But we also help them curate content from their communities, from the ecosystem of partners and customers. And what you'll find as you share this content in a place where it's easy to find and share, and what you'll find is that will attract an audience of followers that will share things with you. And you'll start dialogues within that ecosystem in these venues, and you'll cultivate a group of contributors to your kind of content stream that you're sharing through these networks in a way that can be very helpful. And that really needs to be the role if you're a small business. I think curation and kind of dedicating some time to try to, what's the most important thing I can share with my community today? What's the thing that is most relevant to what they're trying to overcome or achieve? And if I could just find that and share it, or create it and share it, that helps start conversations that can lead to good things.
Yeah, hey, I will give you a real live example right now. So I'm looking at LinkedIn. Andrew Penn, the CEO of Telstra, publishes content on LinkedIn. He's got a post titled "Want to Move the Needle on Gender Diversity? Think Like a Disruptor." This post has been viewed 25,000 times. It's had 623 likes. and 85 comments. I'm not so much into the vanity metrics as I am into gender diversity is a topic that is very top of mind for me and for people in my network. And this is a great piece of content that I can share, but I can also comment on. I can look at who are the 85 people who have commented on this post. And then I can actually see, I can look at their profiles on LinkedIn. It's all about starting to connect dots and find commonality among people. And content is a way of finding commonality. So that's one live prime example. And if I was a sales professional at Telstra or any other organization, gender diversity is very top of mind for many leaders, many employees, many industries. That's a great piece of content to like and to comment and to share across my network.
Yeah, great example of exactly what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then what I could do? I've read some other really interesting content. I've watched some videos on gender diversity. I could actually tweet that to Andrew Penn. I could say, great, I read your post on gender diversity. Here's another a blog post or a video you might find interesting. So I'm not sharing something with Andrew about social selling, but I'm sharing something with him that he's clearly shown an interest in the topic. That's another way to build a better relationship with someone, is think about what are they interested in? What do I know about that? What can I share about that? Not to sell, push my product, but to show that person that I'm interested in them, and that I care about them, that I want to build a relationship and help them. So that's another way of using content, but also that's listening, right? That's using these social networks to quote, listen to what's happening in your buyer's world, what's happening in their company, their industry, with them personally. Are they changing jobs? Are they getting promoted? Are they changing companies? Are they getting new recommendations posted on their LinkedIn profile? But using social to really listen to what's happening in your buyer and your customer's world is a very effective way to start to build better relationships with them as well. And then finally,
interesting.
Sure.
Sorry, Jill. Really quickly, this is an interesting example, I think, with Telstra, because Telstra does both B2B and B2C. And Axel asked, what is social selling better for, B2B or B2C? Just quickly, what are your thoughts on that?
B2B.
Well,
for me, the way I define it is using these networks to do research, to be relevant, to build a relationship that drives revenue. So social selling, social media is highly relevant for B2C, but social selling, which I define as using social networks, and it's all about building relationships with an individual or multiple individuals. The way that I talk about it, social selling is for B2B. Social media is for both. But Paul, do you want to weigh in as well?
Yeah, the first thing is I like to think of them as H to H, right? It's humans selling to humans. And I think a greater and greater percentage of what have traditionally been impulse purchases are becoming considered in the kind of traditional consumer markets, right? I think that, if you're, Google wrote a book about this called The Zero Moment of Truth a few years ago, where it gives the example of walking, pushing your grocery cart down an aisle and looking at the dish soap in the supermarket. And that's the moment of truth that a guy from Procter & Gamble wrote about years ago, about your packaging and the branding and all this stuff needs to be designed around that particular moment so that you can get the buyer to reach for your bottle of dish soap. But Google said, wait a second, now that we live on the internet, and we are connected to networks and sources of information. Even dish soap, you can find discussion groups on dish soap on the internet. You can find surveys of people, SAT stories. You can find reviews. You can see which one's most organic. You can get the list of chemicals that might, your dog might be allergic to. I mean, there's just an amazing amount of information about dish soap. So by the time that you get to the aisle and you're looking at that myriad of products that's on the shelf, you're a much more informed buyer now than you've ever been. And even dish soap is becoming a considered decision. And so you might ask a question if this is something that you care about. You want to get a one that's friendly to the environment and going to be gentle on your kids. You might post, hey, you might ask that question of your social network. So I think it's relevant in the context of B2C marketing, but I certainly agree with you that social selling and the tools that social networks bring to the table in a B2B sense can make you much more effective as a sales professional.
Right. Thanks, guys. So Jill, before we go to the polling question, just quickly jump through these last 2 points on the 5 pillars.
Yeah, so I mentioned listening a bit, and that is really using these networks. I'll give you another really good example. So, because I use social all the time. So I was looking at on Twitter the hashtag Telstra Summit. Telstra hosted a digital summit, and I couldn't be in Australia, unfortunately. God, I would have loved to have been there, but I was not able to be there. But I was watching the activity around the summit by monitoring the hashtag Telstra Summit. And lo and behold, I saw this guy, Greg Joy, tweeting about this is the place to be if you want to learn about digital. I know Greg Joy. He works at a company called Lithium. It's been years since I've talked to Greg Joy. So I tweeted to him, how did he like the event, and that I was working with Telstra on evangelizing social selling. So there's so much you can listen to via the social web, via Twitter, via advanced search in LinkedIn, and just via Google. So that's a real live example of listening and engaging, but it takes skills, like knowing how to use these networks and knowing how to do tweet and sharing content. It takes skill, so it's not easy. And then the final point of measuring what matters. And this is particular from the perspective of a sales leader. If you've got a lot of salespeople who you're trying to move this way, you behavior. You measure behavior. You measure goals. And if you want your reps to do maybe fewer cold calls because nobody wants to be cold called anymore, and you want them to send fewer generic unsolicited emails because nobody wants to receive them, and you want them to use these social networks more, you need to start to measure their activity and their behaviors in these social networks, and then tie that to pipeline and also revenue, because in sales, the rubber meets the road with revenue, and we're not doing social for popularity's sake. We're doing social for pipeline and revenue when we're talking about it from the sales perspective. So hopefully that gives a bit more context into those 5 practices and principles.
Look, and that last point leads pretty nicely into the question from Stephen Kramer. So I'm going to get to that in a second. For all of you guys watching/listening, there's a poll question there. We'd love to hear from you. So Stephen asked, isn't social selling via LinkedIn moving it towards almost junk mail selling, where users will start to stop using LinkedIn? And I've got to say, I get a hell of a lot of approaches myself on LinkedIn from people with just rubbish that have spent no time trying to connect with me as a human being. Jill, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's where mindset, skill set, toolkit. The mindset of the modern sales professional is someone who helps her buyer, someone who wants to build an authentic relationship with her buyer. It's different from volume and spam for that matter. I get a heck of a lot of really bad. I actually have a folder in my email, social selling gone bad, and I see it day in and day out. I literally had a guy who I was connected to on LinkedIn reach out to me and ask me to endorse him for some skills. We were connected on LinkedIn, but I don't know him. I've never worked with him. I'm not going to endorse him for skills that I don't know that he has. That's lying. And I'm not saying to use these networks to do old school tactics and old school ways in new school channels, because it will ruin the network. But everything, if you think about it, the phone used to be a great invention. It was a brilliant invention. Same with email. It was a brilliant invention. But over time, people use these channels the wrong way, and we want to avoid being contacted by someone who's just going to pounce and pitch us. So I am an advocate of using social for social good, not for social spam. Great question. Thank you.
It is a good question. I think, this is putting the finger on, I think, the key challenge that LinkedIn faces, in that their brand is built around professional networking, right? And if they can't find a way to recognize and deter this kind of behavior, it's going to be a problem for them. Because I think if they don't figure out a way to solve that problem, someone else will, and there will be an exodus. I don't think that problem is not, we're not at that tipping point, but I think it could get there. And I also think that they made a good decision when they created LinkedIn, that it's possible for me to connect with Jill, and it's possible for Jill to find someone in my network that she would like me to introduce her to, but that request needs to come through me, right? And I can act as the gatekeeper for the people in my network, right? And what's happened now as more and more people have come onto the network, we're getting more and more people that are just reaching out. And that's driving revenues at LinkedIn, right? That you can subscribe to tools to help you do that. You can use the tool in poor ways, but if you do that, you are not helping yourself. You are eroding your own brand and undermining your own credibility, and demonstrating that you are an old school thinker, right? So, but I agree with the questioner about, is this going to be a problem? It's like, yeah, I think it could be, right?
And the solution is, don't act like a spammer if you're making people approaches, making approaches as a person. Look, the polling question is the results here are pretty interesting. 27% almost of people do not see how content can build leads. So guys, I don't think you've convinced them yet. What do you got to say about that?
Well, I say we have some more content to get through.
Yeah, I think there's the why and then there's the how, right? So I think that it's actually a good poll that leads into the next couple of pictures. This is the why, and it's a simple chart, and it maps a customer journey, and it's value of a customer on the left, and it's time. Time is the horizontal axis, right? And the people in the lower left, down in kind of below the brand awareness phase, don't even know we exist. So that's why you have branding, and you have promotion, and you're trying to get people. You have to become a considered choice, which is what the second little dot represents. Once you're a considered choice, now you're in the world of conversation, all right? And you might visit a website, you might opt into a list, you might download some piece of content to help you think about different alternatives in a particular field. Now, this domain is the part of the process that I think has changed the most. It used to be that salespeople were a resource that you could consult. You'd be thinking about making a purchase of some kind, especially in the technology sector where I spent a lot of time before landing with TDA, but the salespeople were experts. Customers would call me when I was a salesperson and say, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this kind of an initiative. And what does your company know about this space, and how can you help us?" And you got a chance to help participate in the requirements definition, right, for the RFP that was about to be issued. You could do that on your own. Now that research, that conversation is happening in the network. It's happening online. Customers are self-educating about what direction they want to go, right? And that educational process of kind of climbing this chart, the value chart, is also a metaphor for understanding the difference between the people in the lower left and the people in the upper right, who are your brand advocates and your most loyal customers. Those guys get it. And your people who don't know who you are, those guys don't get it. In fact, that's the tension between marketing and sales in most organizations. Marketing will generate a marketing qualified lead that meets a spec that sales might have for title and industry and company size and location. But then sales gets that list of leads, and what do they say? "Hey, these leads stink. I can't close them." They don't get it. Right? So what marketing has to do, and what salespeople should be demanding of their marketing partners, is help me convey this understanding without taking my time. Get these guys ready, educate them, build credibility with them, let them learn about our offerings from their friends and neighbors through these social networks. And then when they do finally arrive in our pipeline, they're informed from our perspective, and they're ready to go. And then once they purchase, it doesn't end there. Then you have repeat purchase and share of wallet and loyalty, and again, hopefully, ideally someday, brand advocacy. And content is the tool that supports that whole process, because it conveys understanding of what we're talking about, right? So that's why we need content, and that's why content matters, because the only reason we're here is to take people who are in the lower left part of the chart and get them to the upper right as quickly and as cheaply as we can. Right.
Yeah, I'll just add that one of the best resources on content and using content from both a marketing and sales perspective is a company called Hubspot, Hubspot. And the company actually sells software, but they have produced so much content around how do they help marketing and sales professionals do the jobs that they need to do. And they've created a whole movement called Inbound. And one of the people I've met who I've been very impressed with is a guy named Marcus Sheridan. He was a pool guy. He owned a pool company, and he realized that knocking on doors and calling people in the white pages and taking out ads in local business journals wasn't moving his needle. And he also had customers or potential customers asking him all sorts of questions about implementing putting in a pool and the maintenance required and so forth. So he just started to, every question that he would get, he'd write a blog post about it, and he would post it online. And he started sending people to the content that he was creating, and then other people, they started sharing that content with their friends who were interested in installing a pool. So content is absolutely how you be visible and relevant to the modern buyer who is doing 67% of their buying process digitally. That's a B2B buyer, B2C even more. And I know, Paul, it's H to H, but those are stats that are not, you can't ignore them, Paul. Like, so much percentage of the buying process.
And I love your example because it illustrates the pool guy is an expert on pool maintenance. And he's an expert. He knows what chemicals to get. He knows how often you got to do whatever it is that they have to do. I have a pool, so I know nothing about that particular domain. But if I did, I would probably benefit from knowing more about my pool and the proper things that should be happening to take care of it. Now, this chart that we're here, this anatomy of B2B social content, we talked about the why you need content, and your example is a good one. The next slide really speaks to the how, and the idea of taking that expertise and packaging it in a way that it can be not just posted online, but easily shared. And if the topic is complex, like, you know, enterprise server class storage systems, or you know, medical equipment, you know, cancer treating radiation therapy devices, those topics are inherently complex. And the understanding that you need to foster around the purchase cycle is you're going to have to take a lot of bites of that apple before you kind of convey the understanding that's required. So this particular graphic is trying to illustrate how you can use kind of comprehensive thought leadership. You know, kind of at the bottom of it is a little light bulb that represents that thought leadership. You can break that into pieces, create shorter and shorter form content that is more easily shared through social networks and to mobile devices to capture the attention of people that are on the outside looking in, or that you may not know who you are or what you have to offer, but might look at a social tile with an interesting quote from a customer on it, or an interesting stat about how much of what percentage of the buying cycle is being done online. And that may draw them into a post or an article about a particular dimension of that challenge that marketers face, and then that might lead to a bigger white paper that talks about a more comprehensive thing. So we're beginning to understand how to align a social media marketing strategy with thought leadership and messaging in a way that we can execute, right? And this graphic and the different kinds of pieces here represent kind of a methodology that we're beginning to understand how to work. Now, this is new, right? We're just figuring out kind of how to do this. And I think some of the skepticism around social selling and social networks and their impact on business is drawn from some of the initial efforts that were made. We saw a lot of, frankly, misguided ideas when social media was taken off and it was brand new. People did a lot of silly things. In fact, people are still doing a lot of silly things on social media that I think are a distraction more than a sales accelerator. And I think that it's a mistake to paint social media and social networking and this kind of social selling methodology with that brush. Not all of it is dopey, right? In fact, there are parts of it that can be very effective. And if you can focus on those pieces and adopt those methodologies, you will benefit, right?
Guys, thank you very much for that. I think it's for the word for the non-converted, we've got some of the Hubspot guys, and as soon as we mentioned that, there was two people that piped up like, we love Hubspot, one channel partner, one someone on there. So, they've done a fantastic job of content marketing, and I'm in the same office as them, so I'm right next to them. I know how great they're doing. So hi to all the Hubspot guys that are on the call. And if anyone wants to learn more about that, reach out to the Telstra account manager about how to use tools and technologies like that. So there's a polling question on about why do you post content on social channels. Really quickly, because we're going to have to get running with the content, guys. I want to ask a question from Jeremy Heap. What's the optimal size for content that you write on LinkedIn or probably in any instance? What's a good size for a piece of content that you're originally generating? Jill? Or Paul, actually. Paul, you're probably the man for this.
Well, I'd be interested in what Jill thinks, too. I mean, it depends on what the idea is, right? Typically, a blog post, most often the things that we're writing are between 500 to 750 words. Kind of that's the level. But the most important piece of it is that first lead paragraph. the first 240 characters, of course the tweet's only 140, but it's a little, I think a little over 200 characters are what gets previewed in a lot of the content sharing applications. And I believe on LinkedIn you can see a preview when you get a list of the kind of the lead story. So you want to really focus on the first paragraph or two for little social tiles and some of these more snackable datagram type things that we see being shared through these systems. The words need to be focused on something tangible, something hard hitting, something aggressive, and then the graphics need to work with that to make it sing.
Yeah, the headline, the title of the post, and then the image. Images, content with images gets shared. I don't have the exact stat top of mind, but it's significantly more, like 10x more than content without images. So the post needs to have a really compelling image, like this one, Meet the Modern Buyer. The modern buyer, I think we're hearing today that she is digitally driven. 92% of B2B buyers are starting their search on the web. She's socially connected. She's mobile with multiple devices. And the modern buyer, quite frankly, she's empowered. She has unlimited access to not only information, but to people. And so we have to figure out how can we attract and engage this buyer. The reality is that a lot of buyers are allergic to salespeople. They avoid at all cost. Call, email, call, email. The buyer is going ignore, delete, ignore, delete. They don't want to be cold called. They don't want to receive unsolicited generic emails. Nobody wants to be sold to, but we all want to be helped. And so the modern sales professional and the new model is more of a reach and teach and educate and engage and being where your buyers are. Sales has always been about that. Be where your buyers are, offline, at conferences, online, in social networks. Be there with the right mindset, not of selling, but of building a better relationship where you're helping someone. So the new model requires a different mindset. It definitely requires a different skill set. And don't underestimate the investment that is required to actually learn how to leverage these digital and social tools. We're living in the age of the customer. This graphic, this is a great graphic to share on Twitter. This graphic tells the story. Sales leaders don't control customers. We're living in the age of the customer, no longer the age of the seller. Today, customers not only have more choice, but they have louder voice. And the buying experience has a direct impact on their advocacy of your product, of your company, of your people. So if you're jamming your sales process down the buyer's throat, it's going to have a negative impact on the back end. This image, this is really about, it relates to inbound marketing. It relates to social selling. Social selling, initially in the beginning, you use these social networks like LinkedIn and Twitter to find your buyer, to listen and relate to your buyer, to connect and engage with your buyer, to find information about your buyer. It's not just who you know, it's what you know about who you know. But done well over time, sharing relevant content and engaging with other people's content and inserting yourself into conversation via the web, social selling is about being found by your buyers. So Jeremy, I think we have another poll question.
We do. So for those on the line, the questions, do you use LinkedIn Sales Navigator as a lead generation tool? So whilst everyone's answering that, here's an interesting question. How can social selling be leveraged for aged people who may not be digitally savvy or as digitally savvy? Paul?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think the thing that's funny is the people that are spending the most time on these networks are the people that aren't working, right? So teenagers that are in high school and have time on their hands spend a lot of time on, Facebook, and used to be MySpace and Twitter and Snapchat and all these. Next year it'll be a couple of new tools that we haven't heard of yet. They're always spending time on these networks, and we are seeing an uptick in some of the older population who are coming online on these social networks really because they want to see pictures of the grandkids, right? That's the bait that's drawn them online. For those that are not technology savvy, I think that the media surrounds them, right, with all of the people that they care about in their lives. I saw my own kids sitting with their grandmother not long ago, showing them pictures on their phones that were being sent to them by friends via Instagram, right? And even though we're not, that experience is not being had by the elderly person in the room who may not learn how to use a smartphone or a tablet, they're still getting content from the people in their lives that are participating in that, right?
Yeah. So that poll result had about almost 90% of people either not using Sales Navigator on LinkedIn or don't even know what it is. Jill, what's your response to that?
Well, here's another saying: a fool with a tool is still a fool. And not calling anybody on the call a fool whatsoever. But my point is, don't start with the tool. Don't go out and buy LinkedIn Sales Navigator if you don't invest in learning the new digital and social channels and skills. There's the free version of LinkedIn has a ton of functionality for anybody to be able to leverage. Same with the Twitter. Twitter is free. So I don't think you have to go out and buy LinkedIn Sales Navigator to do social selling. It makes it more scalable and easier and trackable. You can do more with it, but there is plenty to do without buying LinkedIn Sales Navigator. That's the tool isn't going to turn you into a social seller. So I would do more research on the concepts and learning the skills before worrying about buying the tool.
Thanks, Jill. So, guys, we're at the end now. One takeaway from each of you, very quickly in under a minute, if you can. Jill, what's your one takeaway for everyone on the call today, please?
Yeah, this is about building relationships. This is about building your personal, professional presence. This is about adapting to the way the world is going and investing in you as an individual, in your career. First and foremost, this is about how you continue to stay relevant in the rapidly changing world. So this is about being authentic and real and being the best that you can be, not only offline but online as well.
And Paul, very briefly.
Yeah, briefly. Now's the time. There are some skills to be had here. It is a little complicated if you haven't done it so far, but now's the time because there'll be a new tool or a new thing next year that it'll be easier to learn that new thing if you get started now with what's available.
Now's the time, I think, is a fantastic way to end the call. And you know what? For everybody that hasn't already connected with us, go and do it. You know, we're happy to talk to you and connect with you. At least the speakers, Paul Gustafson, Jill Rowley. My name's Jeremy Little. Connect with us, connect with other people, and now is the time. Guys, you've been on the Telstra Live event. Thank you so much. Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
It's been fantastic, very interesting. Guys, don't jump off yet. Get onto the survey. We'd love to get some feedback from you so we know how to improve these. My name's been Jeremy Little. I'll see you on the next Telstra Live event. Bye.